We have never needed it Tantra like this much before. Tantra literally introduces to the science or weaving. So it is the science of weaving. So Tantra literally is used to create the inner alchemy that allows both the feminine and the masculine within your own self to be integrated into what is called the alchemical gold. The alchemical gold in Jungian psychology, that is the one that I feel that is the most directly merging mysticism and psychology and neuroscience, understands the self as an integrated amalgamation of all these different identities, of all these different components that when fully integrated in what Carl Gustav Jung calls the individuation process, the self allows the persona, that is how you project yourself in the world, to be fully integrated into your identity. And the identity and that specific singularity of your identity as integrated all the different parts of yourself becomes the most powerful realized human, what Nietzsche was calling the superhuman. So it is real important that we understand how to align these components and how to bring them together. I'll say that we can understand mainly 6 components. There's plenty more. There's archetypes. There's so many things that we can dive into. But the core components that we should be doing alchemy and Tantra to create that alchemy, it's number 1, the conscious self, your sun. So the sun, it's how you feel within about yourself and the world around you. That is the conscious self. So I look around me, what do I feel about that? Look around you. What do you feel about that? Do you feel accomplished? Do you feel behind? Do you feel grateful? Do you feel grieving? So it is real important to come to this moment of realization. How do I perceive myself as? How do I perceive my reality as? And specifically, how do I perceive the interaction between me and my reality? That is the core understanding of your conscious self. However, the conscious self, that we're going to place it up, has its counterpart, which is the shadow self. So the shadow self is that which we are, but we do not accept. So we are, but we don't want to accept it, so we repress it and we just pretend that we're not. And that is where the deepest work has to be done. Because the conscious has to be merged with the shadow self. When we do that merging of the conscious with the shadow, of the sun with the moon, we allow our integration process to be authentic. Because when we pretend to be this perfect controlled version of ourselves, then most often than not, we end up living a life that is based on pleasing the expectations of the world rather than knowing who we are. And perhaps in the process of knowing who you are, you have to come to address some really dark things that you are. But you cannot fix them if you don't know them. And you cannot fix them if you don't integrate them. So the process is number 1, you get to know them, you feel that, you see yourself for what you are, including the BS, and then you start to integrate them. And as you integrate them, as you accept them, like, yeah, I'm going to be quite explicit and vulnerable in here, but yes, I am clingy. I accept that I am clingy because I've seen myself in multiple relationships where I end up clinging for the longing of that companionship. And if I understand that my clinging, it's a reality that I need to accept, to be able to integrate, to be able to fix, or like transmute, which is the purpose of alchemy. The purpose of alchemy is never to destroy what you don't like. You never destroy anything. Everything is energy, and energy just transforms itself. So alchemy is all about the conscious transformation of whatever is stagnant, of whatever you desire to transform. And that we must use to dive into those real hidden parts of ourself and come to address them. Address all the deep core things, like in the first chakra, the grief and the comparison. Oh, I am not this. Oh, this person is this, and I'm not that. So all of those emotions in the first chakra. In the second chakra, it can be like, oh, the desire to have connection, sexual connection, pleasure. Maybe there's shame connected to that pleasure. No, I want to feel pleasure, but no, you can't feel pleasure because pleasure is wrong. And I'm not saying the pleasure, all kinds of pleasure is right, but what I'm saying is that we have all of these inner dialogues, all of these inner truths that we need to come to address. Because most often than not, we have all of these inner battles in between, yes, I want to feel pleasure, but not pleasure is wrong, that we just can come to an absolute, understanding of how to integrate those two, so we put them in the box. And that is the box that we never looked at until we open that Pandora box and all the shadows that we've been repressing just come storming to our face. So if we want to prevent that from happening, we need to go to the box ourselves and take one at a time and be like, oh, okay, I like pleasure. I go feel pleasure. Oh, maybe this it's a little off order. Maybe I don't need to be like doing all these kind of crazy things. Maybe I'm looking for, and then you see, as you get to test them in your action, they will unveil in a different way. You will be able to integrate them. You will be able to love yourself for what you are instead of trying to pretend and be that perfect self that you've been taught that is necessary for you to be. It is unnecessary for you to be what someone expects. It is absolutely necessary for you to be who you came here to be. Because that is what teaches the world. That is what teaches yourself. And that is what ultimately takes you to the purpose of this whole individuation process and alchemical process. And it is self-realization. To become what you came here to become. To be who you are. With all the things. Without discarding anything. But fully integrating, transmuting it into its higher octave. That is the purpose. And for that, we need Tantra. So those are the two real important ones. But there's two more that are really important. That is the anima and the animus. So we have the conscious, we have the subconscious or the shadow self. There's something important that I need to distinguish. The shadow self is not necessarily only the subconscious. There's the subconscious, there's the collective subconscious, and there's the shadow. So I want to clarify that. We have the shadow as the counterpart of the conscious, and we have the anima as the counterpart of animus. So this is your left side. So anima is in your left. This is my right, but I'm going to do it for you. So anima is the feminine attribute of a male's mind. And the animus is the masculine attribute of a woman's mind. So if you're a man, you have a feminine psyche, which is called the anima. And if you're a woman, you have a masculine psyche, which is called the animus. And we need to integrate both together. We need to integrate our masculine and our feminine psyche, because the masculine one is the creative, whereas the feminine one is the receptive. And if you always want to be creating, which is the problem with the toxic patriarchy, which is a problem with the toxic masculinity, the macho man that is always being able to and cannot open itself to receive, to be loved. So that is the one side, but we have the opposite side where we have the masculine animus in the female's mind, expressing itself as that power that is being actually coming out a lot lately, of women being able to create in the world, not just being able to receive and nurture, which is the natural understanding of the feminine side of psyche, receptive, nurturing, sensitive, real important, but both require each other to complement itself. If you're too feminine, you're too receptive, you're like in a way too easy to manipulate. But if you're too masculine, you're too aggressive, you're too incapable of receiving and therefore incapable of being nurtured, and therefore you'll die of starvation. So you need to have the beautiful power of the masculine, that is the power of decision, the sovereignty, the one who says, I am here and this is what is going to happen. But you also need to have the receptive nature of the anima, because this is the one that enables you to go to bed at night and rest and let go and fully restore yourself. If you're always tense, if you always want to create, you don't have time for restoration. And if you don't have time for restoration, you will ultimately fall of absolute exhaustion and you'll die. So you need to have both. You need to have the power of the animals, and you need to have the nurturing, beautiful, receptive power of the anima. When you integrate them together, you create what is called the alchemical gold, which is that in the Greeks is understood as this is a really complex word to say, so I'm going to try my best, but is the hermaphroditos. Hermaphroditos is the Greek word that refers to the perfect being which the gods created first. So when the gods created human, they didn't create a 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head being. They actually created a perfect being, way too perfect, which had 4 arms, 4 legs, 2 heads. And it was too perfect that the hermaphroditos community was like, and civilization was like, why are we bowing down to the gods? If we are the most powerful beings, we don't need to be bowing down. So we're going to actually hike up the Mount Olympus so that we can dethrone and take the throne of the gods, of Zeus. And so Hermes saw all of that happening, and Hermes went storming to the gods, and he went to Zeus and he was like, bro, those perfect beings you just created, the hermaphroditos, they are literally coming, hiking up the mount to dethrone you. And he was like, what? My perfect creation? So he had to take on all that anger of having created that perfect being that now wanted to like rebel against him. He took his thunder and he stormed it towards them and broke them in halves. And ever since, they've been confused, trying to find each other's half to be perfect once again. That is the story of the hermaphroditos. That is the story of love. That is the story of why we feel that longing to be with that person, because we need complementation. That is the human. Human is not woman. Human is not man. Human is the integration of them both in the family. And family becomes the core of civilization, and civilization becomes the core of humanity. So the core of humanity, it is not the man, it is not the woman, it is the family. So the core of your psyche, it's not the animus, it's not the animus, it's the integration between them. And when you integrate between them and you're capable of being sovereign while being vulnerable, then you're into something. Then you're fully integrated. Then you become a whole realized being. So we have anima, animus, the conscious, the shadow. And then we have the persona. The persona is the outside. So the left is the anima, the right is the animus, the up is the conscious, the down is the shadow, and the out is the persona. Persona is literally the coat that you create around yourself to expose that self into the world. Because when you're fully integrated, there is a part of you that is vulnerable. So if you want to be fully integrated, you need to be vulnerable. Not only vulnerable, sovereign and vulnerable, but when you are in that degree vulnerable, you need to have a certain coating. You need to protect yourself and your energy from everything, from the surroundings. You need to coat yourself, and that coat, that persona, becomes the limit of your identity, becomes literally the limit of yourself. I start here and you start there. And when that limit is clear, everything is so much easier. But when we allow that persona to become too ferocious, and we allow the world's opinion to storm into ourselves, regardless if it's good or bad, it's really not about that. Because the good comments can be as harmful as the bad comments. The good opinions can be as bad as the bad opinions. It's funny to say that, but yeah, literally. So don't allow the outer world to tell your story. However, be aware of it to the point that you can discern when something that you feel that is true, that resonates, is actually being shown to you. And then you can take that. So it is really important, the persona, because the persona is how you know that yourself is. The persona is the identity that you put out into the world, and is the way that you limit yourself from the world, and is the way that you protect yourself. So you want to be able to be strong by placing that and being, this is who I am, and that's it. And simultaneously being able to hear the consequences that you're creating with the ripples of your actions in the world, and see how those reactions can teach you or guide you to behave in a way that is less harmful, more creative, more aligned with whatever you desire. So that persona is super important, because the way that you project yourself in the world, and in a way, the persona is dictated by the ego. So the ego, it's the way that you define your persona. It's the way that you define the narrative that you're putting out into the world. We're not going to dive into the ego just yet, because it is a long story and it's a tough one, because it is as good as it is bad. It is an integration process on its own, so I'm going to make a whole video on the ego. But now we're going to dive into the inner, the most powerful one, I believe. So if the outside is the persona, the inside is the soul. And the soul is that part of yourself that can't be fully comprehended. That you know, because it is from the place that you perceive the world. But at the same time, you can't fully ever know. Because it is so deep, so profound. It is the deepest, inner, most purest you. It is directly correlated to the inner child. So you can understand in a way as the inner child, especially if you want to play with archetypes. We're going to make a whole video on archetypes, but if you want to play with archetypes, I feel like it could be really powerful to understand your soul as your inner child. Because the inner child has the unprogrammed desire. It is the true utmost desire that you had when you came to this earth. And when you can dive deep into your own psyche and come to see that kid desire of your soul, you'll start to realize what you came here for. Because that kid knows what you came here for. That kid knows exactly what it is here for. And so I invite you to dive deep within it, to look what it wants, to ask it how it feels, and to give it a hug. Because the more that you can come to touch your soul, your inner kid, your truemost self, the more you can start to understand how to weave all of these different components together. Because the conscious is not your truth. The conscious is what you want to be and how you want to perceive. And the shadow, it is not bad. It is just what you haven't accepted. So you need to come to the integration of who you are, not who you want to be or what you can accept, but what you are. And when you come to the realization of what you are as is, then you can work with it. Then you can transmute it. Then you can open the path for that kid desire to express itself into the world through actions, through meaning. And that is the purpose of life. To integrate it all within the soul so that we can project our persona in a way that it is an expression of our souls. And when our persona, the outer, is a projection, clear, coherent projection of our soul, the core of our identity, then you have done the work and you became an integrated, individuated self. And that is the self-realization process. And that is self-realization. That moment that you're like, I am me, what I'm projecting is what I am. And then the magic starts to happen. You start creating faster than ever. People come storming exactly with the one thing you were working with. And it's like all of a sudden it's not you, but everything helping you in that integration process. And then you start to realize that that coating, that persona that was differentiating you from the world, it starts to blur it, because you realize that when you desire something real deep, you're projecting that, and then it comes to you. And it comes in a way that it feels like the person who's bringing it is also you. And then you start to see that everything is this collective grid of intelligence. And your soul is my soul. And my soul is your soul. And there's one soul that put it in each individual and a specific desire. I desire this finger to move like this, and I desire this finger to move like this. They're moving in different ways, and they both have different slight actions to do. He can be like, yes, I am not an index. And I am not this. I have this specific soul of my own that is telling me to do this. But the actual power that is telling them, the individual and the other individual and the other individual and the other individual, to move in a specific way is the same soul. So if we understand that everything is a fractal, the collective subconscious works this way. There's one soul that it is imagining like a nervous system is sending an action pulse. It's like, go do this, go do this. The collective grid is literally like a nervous system. And now the individuals, that is the different parts that can move, they all have slightly different desires. Maybe here is a little itchy. And so I tell this one to go and scratch in here. Imagine you are feeling a little pain, and then the collective greed feels your pain. You're coherent to your pain, and you ask it, please come, helps me. But as you're the soul, as you're the one, it comes and it helps you. I know that this might sound a little crazy, but as you integrate your soul with your persona, your conscious and your shadow, your anima and your animus, you start to see that you are one with all. And that is the spark within a soul. That is the whole purpose of the channel. To understand that for real, my dear, we have all the same spark, and that same spark is the soul of Sophia. Sophia is the knowledge of self. Sophia is the knowledge, but there's no other knowledge than the knowledge of self. So Sophia is the knowledge of self, and we have that wind that was blown into the clay. And that wind spark that was blown into the clay is the soul that differentiates what is true from what's fake. Because this whole thing comes down to one thing: coherence. You see all these people, and that is why I was saying in the beginning that we need Tantra more than ever before. You see all these people being absolutely incoherent. You see all these people wanting one thing and doing the opposite. You see, and including myself, is a collective state of the collective human mind. And we need to address it. People are saying one thing, doing the other, both to themselves and to the world around them. And that is the most sick behavior that a human can have, because our nature, it's to create. And if we are creating based on lies, it won't last. It will crumble. And if the society and the civilization crumbles, then what's the point? No. We want a civilization that is strong. We want a civilization that is integrated. So we need to start with the integration of our own structure of our mind. So that then from there we can start to do actions that are structured and coherent and meaningful. And when we are doing that, then we will start to see a different collective human greed. And that is going to allow the civilization not to crumble, but to integrate its shadows. Because we need to integrate the collective shadows. I love you. Have a strong heart. Kwame Kiachi. Kwame Kiachi is a super powerful word from the indigenous tribes of the Kogi, that is in the north part of Colombia. So this beautiful ancient civilization, they know that the truth needs to be strong. So Kwame Kiachi means heart strong, strong heart. And the heart for them is also the truth. So strong truth. When you see the truth, might be painful. So you gotta be strong. When you look at your shadow, be strong, be loving, but also be strong. I love you. I wish you strength. I'll see you in the next one. Stay in axis. I love you.